Hello, welcome to Grid Live Pre-Race. Enjoy Illinois 300. Denny Hamlin will be leading the field to the green flag. Chase Briscoe is third, and everybody's going to be watching what does Team Penske, especially Joey Logano, does at the Enjoy Illinois 300. Matthew Bro from Grid Network TV joins me, Joe San Diego, as we preview the race. We encourage everyone to participate in the chat room with your questions, opinions, and hot takes. A big thank you to our Patreon investors, Colin, Michelle, Mark, Robin, David, and Matthew, for investing in the Grid Network through Patreon. Link in the video description. Pick a plan every month through Patreon. You invest in the Grid Network and helping us get to the track. Of course, buy me a coffee, YouTube Super Chat if you want to do a one-time investment. And the simplest way to support us, across social media at Grid Network TV, gridnetworktv.com. See Matthew Bro's articles and participate in Pick a Winner. Follow the Grid Ranking, Grid Endurance, and right here on YouTube, subscribe. Hit that bell icon, all notifications, so you don't miss any of our programming. Matthew, we had a crazy Wednesday with IndyCar silly season that would just felt like it was unending, a very long Grid Tonight program. The show, I think, is going to be a little bit more straightforward, especially since we've got Xfinity Series, the Enjoy Illinois 300 at Wide Technology Raceway at Gateway. 3 races have been held here for the Cup Series. 3 different winners, but 2 of them have come from Team Penske. Of course, Joey Logano in 2022. He is the only driver to have a top 5 finish in all 3 races here. Austin Cindric, last year, took the lead when his teammate Ryan Blaney seemed destined to win, but unable to finish. Fuel came up short. Before qualifying, coming into the weekend, DraftKings has Blaney as the favorite. This was around 3 p.m. Eastern earlier today. Joey Logano was the 5th favorite and 9th, Austin Cindric. So all 3 Penske drivers in that top 10 umbrella. Is this Joey Logano's and Team Penske's best opportunity to secure a spot in the round of 12?
I think I would go even more than 100%. I would say even 1,000%, just because of how good Team Penske is here at Gateway Worldwide Technology Raceway. I feel like I have a lot of trouble not calling it Gateway. It's one of those things I think we're going to have those same struggles with Atlanta. And I know it's been a few years where it's been Worldwide Technology Raceway. Just sometimes old habits are hard to break, right? But yeah, if you look at Penske's success here, it has to be their best track, really. I don't know if you could argue in the playoffs, considering Talladega's in the playoffs, and all 3 of their drivers are incredible there as well. But if you look at Gateway, I mean, obviously you mentioned Joey Logano, 3 top 5s, the only one to do it. His average finish is 3rd. The next best driver who has done all 3 races here at Gateway with the lowest average finish is Austin Cindric, who ran really well here. His worst finish is 13th, but he did win here when his other teammate, Ryan Blaney, who has the 5th best average finish here among all drivers. And his average finish is only really bad is because he finished 24th when he ran out of gas. So it kind of shows how good they are here. And I know we're going to talk a little later about it's like the opposite for Hendrick. So it's kind of funny that there are 2 powerhouses in this sport, 2 different manufacturers as well. And they just have complete opposite success at this facility. So yeah, I think without a doubt, I would say this is Team Penske's race to lose. I know if you look at qualifying, it seems like it's either going to be Hendrick Motorsports or Joe Gibbs Racing with Hamlin, Briscoe, all those guys up front. But I think if you can't count anyone out, it would be someone like Joey Logano or Ryan Blaney has really picked up the pace, and it wouldn't shock me either if we saw him towards the front or even in victory lane, just because of how good Ryan Blaney's been this year. So yeah, I think this is without a doubt Logano and Team Penske's best opportunity to secure a spot in the next round. I don't know who it would be. I think it would probably be Blaney's best. Well, it'd be Logano's overall best chance, I feel, because if you look at, we'll talk a little too about his Bristol results. I would be more worried if I was Joey, so I would say Logano's best chance, but overall, I think Blaney would be the favorite to win.
I think when it comes down to it, this is Team Penske's best effort. I mean, after last year, as you said, Blaney controlled the finish of the race, just unfortunate mishap with the fuel calculations. Austin Cindric right there in the right place to inherit the win. And this wasn't like something, say, a Talladega or a wild card race like a super speedway where there was a big one. He went from multiple positions to the win. No, he came from second to grab that win last year. I think he is somebody you got to be watching this race weekend, because when it comes to this race, especially how last year's race went, I think it might be very similar to last year where we had fewer cautions. We'll talk a little bit more about that. That's going to also help Ryan Blaney. I feel Ryan Blaney, he always has a fast car. For Joey Logano, I mean, statistically, it shows he has to be one of the favorites. This year, though, is not exactly the kind of year he has been hoping for, but we know how he and Paul Wolf work together. They could have something up their sleeve for the field. And that's why I think you cannot come out Joey Logano. Penske trio, they're looking great. I know there's Josh Berry as well, too, Penske Alliance, but I think when it comes to the three Penske drivers, the 2, the 12, and the 22, they have to be top caliber drivers you're looking at. You cannot discount them as unable to contend for the win. The only thing we really like to see is if they just come out of the gate, have some issues, and if everyone steps up their game to beat up on the Penske trio. But I think the Penske trio are going to be very hard to beat. And in the chat room, we got Denver joining us. I want to give my respect to Austin Cindric to have a crack in supercars at the Adelaide Street Course. He will get a lot of respect from the Chevrolet and Ford supercar fans. Of course, that was some big news that was on grid tonight, overshadowed by all this IndyCar silly season. SA Motorsports Board is in discussion with NASCAR and teams on a project to bring NASCAR elites from Toyota, Chevrolet, and Ford to Adelaide Supercar Grand Finale annually. I mean, that would be really great crossover. We've seen a lot of the Australian supercar drivers here. At Portland, we had Will Brown, Jack Perkins. Unfortunately, Will Brown, Colleague Racing just had a dud of a car for him. And then Jack Perkins running great, but then overcooked in that final corner. What a race that was at Portland. Great race weekend. I encourage everyone, if you haven't seen our cars from there, check it out. And then consider investing in us so we could be doing that at more tracks. Going back to the discussion of Joey Logano, I know he enters this round in a situation where he's probably not happy with. 3 points below the cut line. So he could easily, 2. He could easily point his way ahead. But the playoff grid, not a lot of distance between 6th and 16th place, He could easily gain on Shane Van Gisbergen and pull away from Austin Dillon. However, if Josh Berry pulls a surprise win or Logano has bad luck, it's just one of those deals where you got to see when it comes to Logano, he could put himself in a bad spot. If Bowman has a strong race or win, he all of a sudden leapfrogs everyone. Austin Dillon, well, okay, I think people don't anticipate Austin Dillon. This will leave Joey Logano entering Bristol potentially almost in a must-win situation points-wise. Now, correction, Joey Logano is 3 points below the cut line. A little bit of a typo on our graphic there. But, Matt, when it comes to Logano, everyone loves to talk about the odd year curse of him not making the championship 4 at season end. The last time Joey Logano won at Bristol, 2015. If Logano doesn't get a win at Gateway, could he be in trouble entering Bristol?
Another thing, how I said earlier, 100%, 1,000%, like I was confident, absolutely. And it's funny, if you don't count, Bristol Dirt when he won the first year, then was in the top 5 the other year, and then I was so confident he was going to do it again, I pick him, and he DNF'd very early on into the race. But for Logano, and the reason why, it's funny, 2015, 10 years ago, I would have been a 9th grader in high school, I believe, around that time. So, dang, it makes me feel like my back hurts a little more in this chair just thinking about that. But nonetheless, yeah, I 100% believe Logano would have trouble at Bristol, considering how there's not a nice word to describe Joey Logano's luck at Bristol in the last decade, besides Bristol Dirt. I was looking at it earlier before the show. There have been 49 drivers, Joe, that have entered a Bristol event in the next-gen era. 49 of them. Logano's average finish is 40th out of the 49. Do you know how absurd you have a three-time champion, arguably one of the best drivers in the sport still, regardless of if it's an even year or odd year. And his average finish, I believe it was like 27.5 or 26.5, was around Harrison Burton, BJ McLeod. Cody Ware has a better average finish at Bristol in the next-gen era than Joey Logano. So, yes, I would be quite worried if I was Logano if he somehow has a bad day at arguably his best track in the next-gen era is Gateway or Wide Technology Raceway, whatever we call it. If he does not have a good day here and get points, I truly believe he is in a lot of trouble. And you can argue, too, looking at some of the guys like behind him, Josh Berry, only been here once, had a day cut short. Alex Bowman, Hendrick hasn't been that great here. We'll touch on that. Austin Dillon, he's not bad here, but he's also not that great here. So, and then Shane Van Gisbergen, who's 3 points ahead of Logano, is one who has never been here either. So I think Logano is probably more confident knowing the people around him currently in the points standings don't do nearly, and they're not even in the same conversation with their talent here at Gateway. So for him to enter Bristol, he's got to just really, really, really hope he enters with a lot of points to the cut line. It's not even talent. It's just luck. And Joey Logano, for some reason at Bristol, those two do not coincide with one another. So, yeah, I think if he doesn't – you'd argue maybe he doesn't need to win because I think it's going to be hard to pass. Apparently every driver was saying that it's going to be really hard to pass. And Logano not starting where he'd really want to. I believe he was starting outside the top 10. Not the best starting spot for someone who wants to win at Bristol, even though his average start here, I believe, is like 8. So, yeah, thank you for pulling up the grid. Yeah, look at it, 13. So he's got to pass some cars to win. But if he can go points racing, get those stage points more than Shane Van Gisbergen, Austin Dillon, stuff like that, I think he'll be more confident. But if he doesn't get stage points and he has bad luck here, I would be 99% worried that he would not make it into the next round.
Yeah, so much could happen at Gateway, especially when you look at the starting grid. Josh Berry, who's in the bottom of the playoff, is ahead of him. Shane Van Gisbergen is not that far behind at 18th. I mean, Shane Van Gisbergen is ahead of Chase Elliott. This could be a very topsy-turvy race, and if there's a big shakeup or worst-case scenario for Joey Logano, someone below him wins, passing is very hard, and he just does not seem to pick up enough points on everyone, he could be entering Bristol below the cut line. That is not a pretty situation for him and that team, and I think it will be really, a dire situation where you can almost compare it to entering Talladega below the cut line because you just don't know what's going to happen at Bristol. Are we going to get a race similar to last time in the night race? Are we going to get a race where tire wear might be a little bit more tricky because it's cooler? I feel Bristol has become a big wild card for this round, and he does not want to be below the cut line. I think he really is putting in a lot of effort, him and Paul, to try to leave here with a win because that would just make life easier for the remainder of this round in the Chatham Denver. Isn't me? Anyone left in the first round can shoot themselves in the foot in Gateway and Bristol if things go south easily. I mean, Bristol especially, you could just get caught up with somebody, you shouldn't be racing hard against, and the next thing you know, you put yourself in a bad spot. Little contact, wrong way, flat tire. I mean, there's so much that could go wrong. And then Gateway, I think this is really exciting. First time Gateway is going to be having a playoff race. I'm curious to see how everyone's going to be racing. Will we see the mistakes? Will we see something we haven't seen before at Gateway? Because when you look at the drivers, especially the ones people anticipate that'll be eliminated. Let's start off with Josh Berry, 16th, 19 points below the cut line. Well, there he is in 12th. Austin Dillon is 14th and 8 points above the cut line. There he is in 15th. Alex Bowman. I mean, gee whiz, Alex Bowman's 15th, but many have said they don't see him advancing. Is it because he is that fourth Hendrick vehicle? Is it because they just don't have that much confidence? Because we have to look over towards the second page, 25th place. Then you have Shane Van Gisbergen, who I mentioned, 12th in the standings, 3 points above the cut line, 18th. Out of those names, the number of drivers that are Chevrolet backed, Bowman, Dillon, Van Gisbergen, that's 3. If those 3 were to some reason go out, that's the potential of Chevrolet going from 7 down to 4. That is looming if things doesn't go good for the Chevrolet teams. That would put them behind Toyota with 5 if Toyota was to get all 5 of their cars out of the first round of the playoffs. And Ford, they only have 4 in the playoff currently, the 3 Penskes and Josh Berry. Are you concerned, Matt, about Chevrolet having 3 of their 4 eliminated at the end of the round of 16?
Not as much, honestly, just because I'm confident Bowman's one of those guys that I think if he gets hot, he can get hot and easily make up those points. I'm actually more surprised, no offense, Ross Chastain, the year that Trackhouse really has been having outside of the Coke 600 and the road courses, just have been missing a lot. So I'm actually more surprised that Ross Chastain just had a really great day. I know he didn't finish in the top 10 at Darlington, but he has that 21-point buffer to the cut line, which is great for them. But when you look at Chevrolet, Austin Dillon, not very confident. I know he's only 8 points back, but with him, again, of all the 16 drivers that made the playoffs, he was the lowest in the regular season standings. And then Josh Berry, I know he's a Ford, but again, like I think he's going to take one of those spots, being the guy who's not pretty much the guy who is not a Chevrolet that I'm pretty confident won't make the next round would be Josh Berry. But then you look, I know Shane Van Gisbergen, again, for me, not very confident. He just, on the ovals, pretty much non-road courses, he doesn't get stage points at all. And I think that's going to really hurt him, especially at Gateway and especially at Bristol when he was battling Cody Ware on pace last time out. And I know Cody Ware is a better average finish I talked about than Joey Logano. But still, when you're battling a Rick Ware car, when you're a Trackhouse Racing Chevrolet with your alliances and stuff, if you're battling Rick Ware on pace at Bristol, it wasn't really a good thing. So I'm concerned, I guess you could say, about Alex Bowman being that far back. I didn't know they would have a 48 or 40-second pit stop that would completely take him out, and then other incidents, obviously, at Darlington. Shane Van Gisbergen would be the second Chevrolet guy. And I don't know about Mr. William Clyde, a.k.a. Chase Elliott. A little worried about him, Joe, just because I think he was very good in the regular season. I don't think people give him a lot of credit for how good he does because he's not the shiny win factor guy like the Kyle Larsons are, like a William Byron will get you 2 or 3. But Chase Elliott will get you a low average finish, and he will finish races just very quietly. He seemed more concerned about Hendrick finishing, I think he was 17th last week at Darlington, and then going to Gateway, which is arguably one of Hendrick's worst tracks on the schedule. So for him, it's just one of those things with Chase Elliott, too, only being 9 points ahead of the cut line. Granted, he's shown he has a lot of pace at Bristol, and he has only 2 races here at Gateway, but he's finished 13th and 21st. Obviously, his injury didn't let him race I believe it was a couple of years ago. Gosh, time flies when you think about it. Holy heck. But, yeah, so I'm more concerned about 2 of the Chevrolet guys missing, and it would honestly be Austin Dillon and Shane Van Gisbergen. But I would throw Alex Bowman just because a 19-point, 19 points to the cut line is a lot more to make up in 2 races. And then even Chase Elliott, I'd be a little worried about just because of the lack of success. I know Hendrick Motorsports, obviously one of the best organizations in the history of the sport, but Chase Elliott getting out qualified by Shane Van Gisbergen. Not a good look for that team. But then again, you look, Kyle Larson and William Byron are both starting in the top 6. So it happens. But curious to hear if you're more concerned, if you think three Chevrolets were going to be eliminated, because can't remember our predictions. I know we all had Austin Dillon, but you had someone who had a pretty good day, and then so did I last week at Darlington. So I think we're all going to be wrong immediately.
Yeah, I think we're all none of us are going to have a perfect prediction, but I'm really torn on this because especially I feel the Chevrolet drivers, they're all top caliber, but it just seems that when it comes to the playoffs, they're making mistakes, and you put all your essentially that old saying that you put all your eggs in one basket. Hendrick Motorsports, the best of the best. But then when they come out of Darlington, they were not looking good, especially Bowman and that comically slow and horrible pit stop. He's in a bad spot. If they're not going to be out strong, the Hendrick Motorsports Chevrolets, the fact that they're sort of scattered throughout the field, indicates I think they might be that great this race weekend. When you have Austin Dillon ahead of you in the grid, that's no offense to the RCR team. Maybe they are working together. I mean, we've had Kyle Busch had a solid run with RCR, the number 8 here at Gateway. I just don't know how much you could rely on that. I don't anticipate Austin Dillon's going to get a win, but I'm just not sure if Alex Bowman's going to get out. So you got those two. And Shane Van Gisbergen, granted, good qualifying effort. That's a good step the right direction, but I think it might be too little in this playoff format where you have to be essentially going for the wins, especially once we get later on to round of 8. You're really in must-win situations. You cannot guarantee you'll point yourself in. In the chat room, Adam, maybe SVG will have a good run tomorrow at Gateway. 18th place starting, not bad. Let's just see what happens. It's going to be really interesting. Denver, interesting comment. I can see tomorrow in Gateway someone in the playoff will intentionally wreck another playoff rival. Just make sure his rival is in a bad spot when in Bristol. Matthew, I'd like to hear your thoughts because I feel like in the past, you would see somebody maybe push somebody out of the way, push them wide, and that ruins the race. But now, especially with right hooking, I feel that's a very narrow line you want to be treading on.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say someone would intentionally wreck. However, I think the tempers flare easily here. I think if we remember when arguably prime Ross Chastain, I do miss 2022 Ross Chastain, I'll be the first to admit, just came in and just was showing out and was like 242 feet from a championship, right? But when he got into it with Denny Hamlin in the first Gateway event, I believe, and just was moving everyone out of the way. I think if you get caught in a pickle where you have maybe one, I don't see, it's hard because Hendrick, I feel like, will leave Bowman and just be like, okay, well, there'll be 3 of us in the next round. It's like, okay. And then Penske, I mean, Joey, I think they're all going to be running up front, so I don't know if that alliance with Josh Berry and Wood Brothers, where essentially he is the 4th Penske car, I don't know if they'll do anything drastic to try to help him out. And I think they've been policing NASCAR specifically. One thing I'll give them credit for is I don't really know if I agree too much with last year's result at Martinsville with the whole Christopher Bell penalty, pretty much where I think William Byron was going to get in anyway, right? Or didn't they penalize Bell? I started talking about it, not really remembering exactly what happened. But I know when Bubba Wallace was complaining about his brakes towards the end of the race, and then Christopher Bell rode the wall, but then you had Chastain and the Chevrolet blockade, letting William Byron kind of stay ahead of them. So that was just one of those things. I don't think we'll see it, more race manipulation in any sort, just because of, I guess the stakes are high, but they're not that high yet. I think if you see anything where drivers drive each other almost way too aggressively, I think you'll see that the following week at Bristol, just because Bristol's one of those, that atmosphere, right? Where not the last cup, but like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, yeah, that kind of, you know how, I can't describe it, but I feel like you know what I'm alluding to when I say the atmosphere at Bristol. So it'll be interesting to see. And if we do see someone have like an intentional wreck, I'll apologize in the post-race show. I'll be like, oopsie, didn't read that correctly.
I feel when it comes to intentionally wrecking to make somebody's life harder, I think I think it was 2013 when Logano swept around and wrecked Matt Kenseth in Kansas. Was that 2013 or was that a different year?
15 maybe.
2015.
Oh, you could be right though. 13. Oh no, I think it was 15. Because Logano was like on a tear in the playoffs, and
Yes.
I believe that like ended up like not helping him at all.
Easy way to remember is it was an odd year, so not an even year. That year when he swept around, won the first race, second race at Kansas, spun Matt Kenseth, he could have easily just, okay, I got a race win. I'll take a little easy. Matt Kenseth maybe get that win. But he went out there, just took him out. Logano said, I'm trying to win this championship. I'm just doing what I have to do. And, of course, the infamous Brian France calling it quintessential NASCAR. And I really felt at that time we're shifting to where in the playoffs, drivers were not going to give an inch because they knew if they won 2 consecutive races in the playoffs, especially kicking off the round, the first 2, and you put somebody in a bad spot by spinning them, fair game. But then Martinsville changed that when Matt Kenseth came back and got his revenge on Logano, and that essentially wiped Logano out of the playoffs. I don't think drivers are going to be willing to say, hey, I'm just going to try to push you out of the way, make you lose 3 or 4 spots. I think that's going to really get to the point where you were getting to that line like with Logano and Kansas and retaliation coming, and it's not going to be pretty. So I don't think that'll be so much the case. But like you said, racing hard, the championship's on the line, the elimination's on the line. That's where I think you're going to see a little bit more physical racing. At Gateway, it's going to be more, okay, so much what Chastain and Hamlin, like you alluded to, or just hard racing and somebody just got a little too grumpy and just let their tempers get the best of them. It'll be interesting to see what happens with that. In the chat room, Gage, welcome to Watching Grid Network. William Byron, 2025 champion. Thank you for that comment, Gage. We encourage you to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss our wrap-up program tomorrow, as well as Grid Encore for Xfinity Series and Wednesday Grid tonight. Qualifying. That wrapped up not too long ago. Denny Hamlin, as I mentioned, on the pole. You have Kyle Larson, Chase Briscoe, Ross Chastain, and Ryan Blaney rounding out the top 5. Those 5 also occupied 5 out of the top 8 spots in the playoff standings heading into this weekend. Is it safe to say one of them is going to find victory lane tomorrow?
I would say, yeah. I truly believe one of at least 3 of those 5, I truly believe will find victory lane. Just because, Denny Hamlin would be the best driver here if he didn't wreck out of the first time he was here, considering he finished second here both times. You could argue that with Kyle Busch, too. It's one of those things where both of them were like runner-ups both times, or either first or second, and then they wrecked in one of them, and then their average finish dropped from second or third to 12.7, both of them, funny enough. But, yeah, I think Denny Hamlin would be probably the favorite starting on pole. Obviously, it seems like every time he comes to the round 1 in the playoffs after Darlington, regardless of what the event is, he just does really well here. So for that, I would say him. Ryan Blaney's another one, just because Ryan Blaney was, 1.2 miles away from winning if he didn't run out of fuel on the last lap. And just Ryan Blaney's just good, it seems like, everywhere. So I would say he's one. And then I know I trashed Hendrick a little bit, but Kyle Larson really is – he has the 3rd lowest average finish among active drivers at this track. And it's just quietly. His best finish is 4th, worst is 12th. When you think of Kyle Larson, you don't really think quiet. I feel like he always makes a name for himself. Checkers, I can't say checkers or wreckers, but I feel like there's always a notable thing to talk about Kyle Larson when it comes to racetracks. And here, it's just, I feel like it's been quiet. So we quickly forget that he's good here. But with Chase Briscoe, though, and Ross Chastain, I think Briscoe is going to take it, I can't say easy, but he already has that win. He has would be the points leader regardless too. Without if it wasn't a win or you're in situation. So he's already going to the round of 12. I don't think he has too much to worry about. I know he's starting up in the top 5. But this really isn't his best track either. So if you actually look at the results, trying to find his name, and I can't. I must not be looking too in-depth, but he's just one where he's just got to go out there, really, and kind of, I can't say sandbag for lack of a better term, but just, get your laps in, try to get as many extra playoff points as you can if you can win a stage or even win the race, right? And Ross Chastain, I'm not sure. Trackhouse I can't think of a correct terminology to describe them. It just feels like sometimes they're there and sometimes they're not. And I guess him being starting in the top 5, it's one of those things. It's like, yeah, it could be a good thing for them. But then you look at the lap averages, and then I can't find Ross Chastain in the top 15 because he is 18th this week in practice. So I know he qualified fast, but it's like, are they going to show out? I don't know what's going to happen with Trackhouse. I feel like you truly can never predict that organization unless you're Shane Van Gisbergen on a course that goes left and right. Then you can predict how they're going to do. But yeah, I would say it really is safe to say it's going to be one of those 5 guys that will be celebrating a victory at Gateway. And I don't believe any of them has won here yet. And so that's pretty interesting too. I think it'll be cool to see a first-time winner at a new track, especially if it's Denny Hamlin, considering it seems like he's won literally everywhere, but not here yet. And this is his best track without a victory. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I would say probably one of those 5. And we'll see someone like William Byron or someone I didn't mention that will find victory lane. But it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I think those 5 are easily drivers that could go out there, get that win. I think it's just really going to come down to what happens throughout the duration of this race when it comes to the pit stops, because we saw in Darlington some of those pit stop mistakes occurring. If you have a car that's not handling, and everyone's talking about it's going to be very tricky to pass, that's going to be really, I think, one of the big moments is finding out how hard it is to pass throughout this race. Because if you got a car that's handling good, might make a pass, especially those restarts. Those restarts are going to be crazy thinking about it. But if your car's not handling good, you could fall back and lose spots. But maybe, just maybe, you got enough dirty air to prevent anybody from getting around you. This race is going to be a very interesting one. I think pit stops, especially if we get any green flag pit stops, I'm really curious to see, will somebody try to undercut, pit first, pick up positions? That is going to be another key element of this race. In the chat room, Denver, Denny Hamlin is not in a good mood at the moment. They make he more stronger as a driver. By the way, will be hilarious if he wins the championship and see the presentation afterwards. I know we talked about it in private, Matthew, how that would be a very interesting trophy presentation. It'll be interesting to see how Denny Hamlin, 2311, if they could continue doing what they're doing. And of course, Denny Hamlin started on the pole. Really, and when you look at 2311, I mean, you got Bubba Wallace up there in 14th, Tyler Reddick in 7th. They're not looking too bad. But then we brought up again Alex Bowman, the worst starting driver among the playoff drivers. He will roll off 25th. His Hendrick teammate Chase Elliott, 19th. Shane Van Gisbergen, another Chevrolet driver, 18th. With how Hendrick Motorsports has done at Wide Technology in the past, should Bowman and Elliott be worried?
I believe so, honestly. And one thing I wanted to mention, too, NASCAR Insights, and I believe Trey Ryan over there put out a post. Denny Hamlin's actually the 3rd oldest back-to-back pole winner in NASCAR Cup Series history. Mark Martin in 2009 was in his 50s when he did it, and Bill Elliott was a little bit older than Hamlin in 2002 as well. So I want to point that out. I think it's a fun fact. I actually sent in our private chat, and I put youngest by mistake, which would be crazy considering how old Denny Hamlin is. No offense to him. But yes, Alex Bowman and Chase Elliott, I truly believe should be worried. I really do. Just because Alex Bowman, if you look at the grid, you look at guys who are currently in this race based on the averages. I know it's a small sample size. There's only been 3 races here. And Alex Bowman is a driver who has the worst luck than anyone, I feel, when it comes to racing. And he's another one, like I previously mentioned, if he can get hot, he can get hot and really tear through. But sometimes when he needs to get hot, he has events like that 40-second pit stop last week. And then this week, starting 25th. He has, I believe, looking at it, around the 25th best average of all the guys in this race. So not a good look. He finished 8th here, but he also finished 36th here. So not really the best again for that organization. Oh, sorry, I was reading the wrong one. 13th is his best finish here, and 28th is his worst finish here. So yeah, Alex Bowman should be a little bit worried just based on the way he's kind of cooled off a little bit, and really not by his doing. With pit road issues and stuff like that. And then Chase Elliott, he only has 2 races here. Like I mentioned, 13th was his best finish. 21st was his worst finish. Chase Elliott's a guy who's going to get you a lot of 10 to 20th place finishes, but I think he really needs to go points racing. He needs to make passes and score points, because if he has a bad day and someone in the standings behind him, like a Joey Logano, for example, has a really good day, Joey Logano can get hot at any time, any place, except Bristol, seems like, in the next gen era, but especially at Gateway being arguably his best track on the schedule. If he does a great day, Chase Elliott has a bad day, now we're looking at 2 Hendrick Motorsports drivers possibly being eliminated in the first round, which is crazy to even think about, because there was a point in the season when the regular season standings where they occupied 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. And now it could be possible that, Bowman was like 8th at the time, but it could be possible that 2 of the powerhouse drivers are out in the first round. So I would be worried if I were them. I really would be. With Shane Van Gisbergen, though, too, I don't know how he's going to handle this. I really couldn't tell you. Again, Trackhouse, very unpredictable organization. They're very fun to watch. I would argue some of the most fun to watch, especially when they got guys like Connor Zilic obviously coming up. And if you're watching this live, Xfinity race comes on very, very soon if you're watching live. So make sure you tune in. Trackhouse Racing driver, development driver. Zilic is on pole for that race too. But yeah, the Trackhouse is very, very unpredictable. And then Hendrick, they're arguably the best organization in the sport. I would say they probably are the best organization in the sport. But for them, it would put almost a stain on the season how much success they really have had for arguably their top, I can't say their best driver or most consistent driver, Chase Elliott, I feel, is just because he's not a guy that's going to get really hot and really cold like Kyle Larson, like William Byron, like Alex Bowman. Chase Elliott kind of just does what he's got to do, like the flat line. Like he shows up and he finishes wherever he needs to, usually in the top 20. So yeah, I'd be worried. Sorry for my long rant, but you never know what can happen. We could be having a completely different conversation come this time tomorrow.
Yeah, I feel this could be a very unpredictable race, especially when you look twice out of the 3 past races. This race has gone to overtime, 2022, 2023. Last year, of course, no overtime. Last year, there was only 5 cautions, but when you compare to the first 2 races, a combined total of 21 cautions. And some of the drivers that have finished 30th or worse here, Denny Hamlin, Austin Dillon, Bubba Wallace, Chase Briscoe, Tyler Reddick, and Josh Berry. So I think this could be a very unpredictable race. As you mentioned, you could have trouble at the start. Everyone's trying to get in that bottom groove. Everyone knows passing is at a premium. The restarts could be super treacherous, especially since these are very flat corners. It's going to be an intense battle for everybody in this race. I think NASCAR knew what they were doing by adding this race in there. In the chat room, it's a free hit for SVG in the playoffs. There's no pressure on him in this year's playoffs. I guess being a rookie in the playoffs, you're sort of exceeding expectations, but I think still there's pressure that let's see how far we could go, because there's always bonuses and a lot of perks if you advance into the next round. I have to ask you this. When it comes to having a tough race Sunday, as I mentioned, some of the drivers that have finished 30th or worse include Denny Hamlin, Austin Dillon, Bubba Wallace, Briscoe, who, of course, coming off a win, so he's probably the least stressed driver out of everyone. Tyler Reddick, Josh Berry. Who do you see as the potential biggest red flag as they're in trouble entering Gateway?
I would argue Josh Berry, just because obviously he only has one race here at the Cup level, and it ended with a left brake rotor in the front blew, and he didn't make it halfway, so he ended up finishing, I believe it was 36. So his lack of experience at the track might play a factor, but at the same time, these guys are far ahead in the points, but Tyler Reddick and Bubba Wallace really haven't had any success here at the Cup level. You'd argue Reddick did finish fourth, but he also has a 35th place in a DNF. And then Bubba Wallace, besides his truck win here, which a lot of people forget, he did win a truck race here. His best finish in Cup is 21st here, and he has finished 30th as well as his worst finish. So I guess if you're Bubba Wallace and you Tyler Reddick, you seem like you just built a lot of momentum, but when it comes to playoffs, one bad day could kill you. Honestly, not kill you, but you know what I mean? Like, it could hurt you in the standings. Not that extreme, but so I would say Barry's the more obvious one, I feel, just because his only 120-something laps in green flag action here, and he was running in the back most of that day. You can't, Stewart-Haas Racing versus a Penske affiliate, Wood Brothers Racing, I don't know how comparable that equipment really is, but as we saw with Chase Briscoe, seems like he's made a great tail going from that equipment to Joe Gibbs' equipment. Noah Gragson doesn't really have that same fate. He's just been not really the best. And then Ryan Preece has shown better equipment, has shown how great he can be. So I feel like Barry, you argue Gregson's been the worst of that former Haas bunch, but Josh Berry, even though he has a win and he did make the playoffs, I would say he's only really been the third best of those four guys I had mentioned from the Haas team last year. So I would say I would be the most concerned. Biggest red flag would be Josh Berry because he's got to go out there and try to score as many points as possible, but he just doesn't have enough experience on these tracks. And then I'm not going to mention Austin Dillon just because it's Austin Dillon, and I wouldn't really say like he's just going to be there. He did finish sixth here, though. So like you had mentioned earlier with the RCR cars, you don't know when they're going to hit on the setup, whether if it's similar to Richmond's setup. They always hit on that one, it seems like, these past couple seasons. But when it comes to the Gateway setup, you really don't know what you're in for. So I wouldn't really be too worried about Austin Dillon. I think he'll quietly have a pretty decent day, 15th to 20th, obviously starting inside the top 15. But yeah, Josh Berry, and then I'd say more Bubba Wallace and Tyler Reddick haven't had a lot of success here. So you could be one that could hit those tracks. This track could hinder those guys and maybe not take them out of the race because they're fourth and fifth in the standings, Reddick and Bubba. But it could really take a big chunk out of that gap heading into Bristol, where I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I feel if Josh Berry, if I had to pick one of those drivers, I think he's the one that's most likely could have a bad day, and I feel they'll be in Bristol in a mudslinging situation. And I think, honestly, Berry, as good as he is in short tracks, entering Bristol in a must-win situation, I just do not see that ending well, and I think he might be coming to the end. So I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on Berry and that team at Gateway this weekend to just have a good race. Hope others have bad luck, point their way closer to the cut line, or even if they find themselves in a position, get a good result, top 10, top 5. That'll be a big win considering his lack of experience here. At the end of the day, I know we're all talking about the playoffs, but some drivers we want to give some shout-outs to. Zane Smith, Chris Buescher were the only two non-playoff drivers in the top 15. We know Buescher, again, so close to making the playoffs. He could potentially go out there, especially win at Bristol, so that could be a spoiler for anyone that's in a must-win situation. Zane Smith, he has had some good runs, just sometimes the results don't show from good qualifying and bad luck in the race. Do either of these drivers pose a threat to win, or do any non-playoff drivers do so?
That's tough because I don't really want to go against my point like I had mentioned earlier about, I think it's going to be one of those playoff guys, one of those top 5 starters. But it is funny with Zane Smith. Obviously, he did make his Cup Series debut at this track, if we remember correctly. I believe it was the race that Chris Buescher had COVID, I believe, in 2022, and Zane Smith ended up getting in the number 17 RFK Ford and finished in 17th after starting in back 32nd. So it's funny, he had mentioned in that they do that jog thing where they run the track with that one social media influencer. It's really fun to watch them. They answer questions, and Zane Smith had actually mentioned his debut in Cup and Trucks, I believe, were both at Gateway. So I think that was cool to mention. And then obviously Chris Buescher being the only other non-playoff guy in the top 15, with him being the guy that Zane Smith replaced to make his debut. So a lot of fun connections there. But I don't really see either of them as too much of a threat. They're good, obviously, but they're not like really great here. And then when you hear the drivers mentioning about not being able to pass and stuff like that, and then having 14 or 13 of the playoff guys being inside the top 15 starting spots, those guys are going to want it more. They're going to race harder. I don't think Chris Buescher and Zane Smith are going to race the playoff guys as hard as they would the non-playoff guys for like the best of the rest standings, right? So I don't know about those two. I think if Kyle Busch could have a really good day, Joe, he's in for it. He is starting 22nd, and in practice, they were just not good at all. But I feel like this could be an opportunity for Kyle Busch that if there are green flag pit stops and they stay out on strategy and it works out, and RCR brings a car they did for him, I believe it was last season, or even 2 seasons ago, that he can contend for a win. I think it would be really cool. And Kyle Busch, I truly would believe if there is a non-playoff driver that doesn't upset, it would probably be him. And I still think he's got it. It's somewhere in there. I know he hasn't won in quite a while, and a lot of it's a product of the RCR cars. And I know he had mentioned in an interview too that he said something along the lines like he's almost worked harder in these last 3 years with RCR than he ever did with Gibbs and Hendrick. And I think a lot of that has to do with Brexton, moving up in the Bandoleros, the legend cars with Joe Ryan and the micros. So I think Brexton's keeping him busy too. But at the same time, I think with Kyle Busch's mentality, he is getting older, but he knows he's still one of the best, is probably the best to ever do it across all of NASCAR's sanctioned sports, like trucks, Xfinity Cup, all that stuff. So I think he would be, in my opinion, the threat to get it done that's a non-playoff driver, even though he's starting in the back. But if anyone can make passes in traffic, I feel like it's Kyle Busch.
Kyle Busch, I think he has to be somebody you got to watch. He has had success here at this track. It's really going to be coming down to the situation of how easy it is to pass. But I think some of those drivers, Kyle Busch, Chris Buescher, Buescher has a rocket of a car. I think he's going to be showing a lot of potential to get his way towards the front. And, of course, towards the front, get the win. Let's dive into pick a winner. Scores have been updated to reflect Marc Marquez, surprise, surprise, winning the sprint race. Almost didn't win it considering his brother was leading up until the end. But as you can see, red indicates to people that unfortunately are no longer mathematically eligible for the pick a winner championship. 52 points on the line when we enter this race weekend, plus potential bonus points if there are any series that came to the final race with 2 drivers or more with a shot at the championship. Looks like maybe NASCAR at this pace will be the only series that'll have an undecided championship by the end of the race. So we encourage everyone, comment who you think is going to win the NASCAR Cup Series race at Gateway. Plus, let's throw in there Formula One at Monza. We still have them, and might as well MotoGP. I think we're all going to go with Marc Marquez MM93. Matthew, who are you going with for NASCAR Cup Series?
Oh, Joe. I'm so mad at myself because I do stuff with my father on the side, like NASCAR things with the family group, and I actually picked Briscoe to win, and I changed my mind on Grid Network on the broadcast, and I ended up going with Reddick. So I could have a bigger lead on Kobe. I hope he's listening. It's like, Kobe, I almost tried to pull away. No, he mentioned as a joke the playoffs. If we did a playoffs or pick a winner, please don't consider that, Joe. Please don't consider that. But yeah, I'm gonna go with my gut and my heart on this one. I changed it up and it bit me in the butt last time, so I'm just gonna go with arguably the best driver to never win a championship is the best driver to never win a championship. I say arguably a lot, but I really would debate this with anyone. I think it's going to be Denny Hamlin that is in victory lane, just because it is Denny Hamlin. And if you want my Formula One pick, I'll probably have to post it on X or Twitter. I don't know, because I didn't think Max Verstappen was going to have fastest lap in Monza history, beating the Lewis Hamilton W11, which is absolutely absurd. So I'm going to say tentatively, I'm going to go with Max Verstappen just because I think he's due for a win. It's been quite a while since he's got a win. So I'm going to go with Max Verstappen and Denny Hamlin, two of the best drivers in their sports at the moment.
Two of the best. I think for me, for this race, I'm leaning towards the Toyota camp just because I'm feeling they're the ones that are looking good. I'm torn between Chase Briscoe or Denny Hamlin. Last week I went with Denny Hamlin because he got the pole. It was Chase Briscoe on the other side of the front row that got the job done. Considering he was the fastest in practice and left a little too much space, I think I'm going to have to go with Chase Briscoe this week. See what happens. Formula One, yeah, of course, we encourage everyone, share your comments, and remember, picks are not locked until the green flag or the lights go out, so you can always change. I think for F1, that's a wild card. There's a side of me that wants to go with Verstappen just because it almost seems like it's been forever, but I'm not going to lock that in. But I think for MotoGP, we could both lock in today, right now, for the two of us and Kiska. Marc Marquez will win the Barcelona Catalan Grand Prix tomorrow, and we'll recap the Grand Prix, the NASCAR Cup Series, Formula One, and the latest grid ranking on Grid Live wrap-up tomorrow. So subscribe, hit that bell icon so you don't miss any of our programs, and a big thank you to our Patreon investors, Colin the Show, Mark, Robin, David, and Matthew, for investing in the Grid Network through Patreon every month. Link in the video description and cross social media at Grid Network TV, gridnetworktv.com. Like, subscribe, hit that bell icon so you don't miss tomorrow's wrap-up program. Grid Encore on Monday, Grid Tonight Wednesday, and we'll do this all over again for Bristol, the cutoff race for the round of 16. For Matthew Bro, I'm Joe San Diego. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time, and enjoy the races.